Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November edition of 100 Pictures of Honey. I can't believe it's been almost a year that I've been doing this now, and it's still exciting. And I've had so much fun bringing writers and people that I admire and enjoy their work to others, right? Hopefully helping you discover new writers that you might like. If you just arrived, I'm going to one more time pop into the chat where you can find us on social media. Please stay muted during tonight's reading, but support our readers through your hand gestures or the Zoom reactions or dropping lines or encouragement in the chat. All of those are much appreciated by the readers and by myself. So our format will be in just a moment from now, I'm going to introduce our first reader. I'll be putting their bio and links to their book in the chat, but I'm going to give kind of a little bit more of a personal intro. And then mostly tonight, what you're going to do is hear these three fabulous poets read their own work and talk about their own work. So our first poet this evening is John Compton. And I first met John online on Facebook when he was undertaking the Herculean task of doing a poetry show every single day for about 3 months. I think over 300. No, I think it was more than 3 months because I think it's over 300 shows that he just called the JoJo show. He would invite a poet on and let them read and talk about poems, ask wonderful questions. And through this little show, we got connected, and I learned that John is a person that's so genuine and open. There's not a bit of artifice about him. He wears his heart and his love for poets and poems on his sleeve. His work is both intensely personal and populated with kind of stunning, surreal fragments, both of image and of language, but his poems dance. And I really enjoy his I just ordered his book, which isn't out yet, and he'll show you the cover when he's on. But it came with a free PDF also of one of his chapbooks, which is called The Skies Fell Revelations. And just an example of his wordplay that I love is how far is enough when you're broke, and before broken was a thought. A thought before the broken is too far to comprehend, and far is as far can go. And let's see how far John goes with his poems this evening. John, the floor is all yours.
I just want to say I could cry. That was beautiful. Thank you. I just might ask you to do all my introductions from now on, just like here's Donna. But thank you. And you make that poem so much better than when you read it than it is. Well, anyhow, so here's my book cover because I don't have the book yet. No one has the book yet, but I have these awesome postcards that I ordered, and I'm gonna sign them. And there's 50. And every one of them I have a spectacular different note on there. And 50 random people who pre-order will get one. And like she said, there's the free PDF chapbook. So when you pre-order, you get that within 24 to 36 hours. And I'm gonna read from the book. So hopefully can y'all still see me? Okay, because I have this new tablet and I'm still figuring it out, but I had to go to my document. So I'm gonna read, oh Lord, the first 3 poems to start out with. Let's see what time it is. And then I like to read spontaneously. So in between, there might be pauses because I'm gonna find another poem. So this first one is titled, His Hair Went Up Like a Wick. Lost in the atmosphere, wanting the flames to undress my body and ashes cover my mother's face, I want her to remember a beautiful son. When I killed my only dear, I cried. It wasn't that she was dead, but alive, observing her blood. She pled from her eyes. My father told me to shoot her again. Not evil, but love. The second bullet would be peace, where the first forgot its duty. And that's that poem. And then the second poem, and these three poems have the same title, but they're like, you'll see. His hair went up like a wick too. Imagine being sacrificed, but instead of red, smoke pours out, smelling of incense, and how gorgeous the cloud would form. I curve lines to the east, hoping they become less human, and build a church from poems so God will understand how religion can conjugate into a manuscript and be written by men who have no reason to worship him. And that's that poem. And the next poem. His hair went up like a wick 3. I regained consciousness from this delusion. To confess an atonement, reality is suspicion. And yes, if you believe God formed man from dirt and Eve from our rib, then eat the apple I give. Let's bind ourselves in such sin as two men, two lovers destined together within this unholy regime. Come unwrapped and exposed, praying in a hollowed tongue that you will take me into this harrowing unknown. Your hands bound, the misinterpretations, let me be as I was born. And that is that poem. And this book is a lot of grown-up gay, and I call it the Red Bible Belt because it's a lot of Republicans and a lot of churches. Literally, where my house is, I live between two churches. There's nothing in the town I live in, but there's a lot of churches, even though it's about that big right there. All right, so this one I've read before. I try not to read the same poems. I try to have my readings all different, but this one is really, it's powerful and I like it. So I try to read it every time. It's called The Men Who Made Bonfires. They took the two men from their bed, nude, and bound them after their on-site trial. They dragged them from their home, their secret revealed, and forced them to the town square. They held them up as vile distrust and laced their bodies, each bound inside a tire filled with gasoline, for all to see the monsters burn, their disgust in flames, what two men shall never gain. They clothed them in fire, made them women in orange dresses, dancing. And that's that poem. All right. So here's the next poem. The Waltz, or How One Becomes More Clean. Surround me with barbed wire. Love me with prods, Jesus and God. They have named me homosexual, enunciating ways to cleanse me. I fancy how many more women they've tasted than I have men. I marvel at their hands and how many stones they'll be able to throw before the first one hits me with ease. Let's mix mud and blood and meat. Their smiles will be gorgeous. And that's that poem. And now I'm going to take a shift and scroll down to the poems are in section, or the books are in sections, and the first section is a lot of religious poems or religious poems. And the second section is more like names. And so I'll read this one, which a lot of people seem to really love, and it's titled Roland. If my father had not sewn his palms to my mother's womb, I would have never known his existence. His voice like vinyl, thick and scratched, barely audible through the skin. If he had known my ears worked, maybe his voice would have been louder and he wouldn't have been afraid to say, I love you. And that's that poem. And this next poem, and I'm sorry if I'm reading too fast between, the only one I can see is Donna because I had to like squish my zoom down. So it's just me and Donna, and I'm really sorry. Um, this one's titled John. My birth caused hemorrhaging. I broke my mother open, excavating through placenta and breath. My first scream became default. I knew the hospital walls. For 3 days I studied them, waiting to find my mother's face. That day I killed parts of her she would never replace, but her smile didn't condemn me. Her voice lulled awakening. And there's that poem. All right, let's scroll down some. Do, 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 do. But yeah, yeah, and the books through, I just want to talk about Ghost City Press real fast. It's coming out through Ghost City Press, and I love Kevin, and Kevin is amazing, and I'm very honored that he picked the book up and everything. So and it's coming out really fast, only like 3 months after it was accepted. So that was very exciting. Um, Okay, Donna, I got a question. Am I allowed to read a mature poem?
Go for it.
Okay. I always, they're in the book, but readings are different. And so, but like I've read this one before and people like enjoy it and I say enjoy it, but you'll see. Um, they've never like, yelled at me for it. So it's titled Dog. The dildo is a decoration on the table like a lamp. The blue luminous as a firefly. It lies silent like a secret. Its long rubbery body waits. I get it in my hands and it wags its head like a snake, slithers inside. It opens me like a prayer. And that's that poem. All right. And yeah, you get a free PDF chapbook and it comes with a really cool cover and it's like 20 poems. And so it's like an appetizer while you wait to get the book. And that was my idea. And I was really glad Kevin was cool with it and was able to figure out how to do all that to send it and stuff. All right, I'm going to go to the very bottom and I'm going to read the very last poem. I've never read this poem because it's long and we're coming up on like 10 minutes or 9 minutes or something. So I think I'll read this poem and then that way it takes up all the rest of the time. And this is the longest poem in the book and it's one of the longest poems I've ever written because I like short poems. But and it also was nominated for a pushcart prize, and I think that's really cool in the sense of not that oh I was nominated, but the editor takes all their poems and they believe in your poem enough to send it off to be nominated. So that's what really gets me, that they believed in my poem. Not and then will I ever win? Who knows? Probably not. But the exciting part is the editor believes in my poem enough that they think there's a chance it'll make it, and that is what honors me. And this poem is called The Every Tree. While transitioning through each breath, fixated, mouths playing back recordings, welcome to life after. You endure until fire quits burning your wrists. There is a form to the body, shapeless. The skin fragments like paint on an antique vase. Peel back skin to make blood, but not enough. Let the inner self relax. The straight razor's dash is brisk, two lateral stripes. The gist, to become one with the dream. You wear maggots like rice earrings, eat eyes like oysters, suck them from the socket of the shell. Salt dehydrates until your skin hugs bones. Your tongue dilapidates, then teeth release. Lips fall from the jaw, hair still grows across your chest. You become sterile. Half asleep, half amazed, you woke, seams on your wrist newly scabbed. Breached from placenta, poured onto the floor, naked and cleansed. The dark birth purified him, washed dusk from his eyes, opened the throat and lungs inflated, so like an infant, he can cry up phlegm. You stumble into panic, crawling across the yard like a spider. On hands and knees, you traverse over grass. Or is it that you're escaping to? Nails root into the ground like earthworms, wild and covered in slime. Your eyes dance until they are focused. Your mouth is pregnant with a tongue that will forgive you for drying up like a stone that will crush your skull, and someone will find it as a mistake, carrying you home like a pulled tooth. Your limber cock, that swinging pendulum like a trunk, an extension that will grow outward like a limb. It rubs the skin, slaps the belly past dogs and cats, and into abstract claustrophobic landscape of ghost shapes mistaken for rotting darkness. Her breasts prepare to feed you, and they burst. A river erupts in milk. When he slips through the density of weeds, everything becomes heavy. He strikes a match. He hears birds like hacksaws cutting through leaves. Branches shake while a leaf loosely fumbles to the ground. He catches it like a death-head moth carefully. It tips off the edge and drifts to the ground, becoming a snack. She sucks it into her mouth. He freezes as her teeth vanish in darkness. He strikes a second match. His ears turn downward, focusing on her jaw in the midst of crunching leafy bone. Red stalactites rescind from inside his wrists and go after her tongue like bayonets, ripping out chunks, and what is left retreats back into her mouth. Startled, he drops the third match into brush and everything catches fire. The treetops have settled into igniting like wick, and her hair burns, and her skin melts, and the ground swells below him and shifts. Under the first layer of thick charcoal mud, a pine box. His heavy black foot impels the lid. A section of face laughs underneath. Death's deceased tongue. I have cut you down with yourself. Dying rearranged his mourning and called him back to his dissolution. Depression bit down too hard. Coming untethered, stud by stud, the realism falls loose, and that is where he found the surface of hell through the heavy smoke screen of deluded eyes. And that is that poem.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect time, perfect 15 minutes.
Okay.
Again, I dropped the link a couple times in the chat to John's book, which should be out very soon. And we are going to move right along to our second reader, Suzanne Frischkorn, and I'm going to put her details in the chat as well, and I'll do that a couple of times. Again, it was the internet that introduced me to Suzanne's work. What would we do without the internet? And her book, Fixed Star, which just recently came out. Beautiful book, inside and out. The book is an exploration of heritage and family and the body, full of rich imagery and kind of these echoes and hauntings of what separates us from the homelands of ourselves. She uses many references to her poetic North Stars, lots of references to other writers in this book. And those fix us into this sky of her poems, which are full of formal dexterity and also full of light, I'm just going to read a very small part of the book. Opens with a poem, which then repeats in parts throughout the first section, called Cuban Palomita. And a palomita, if I'm not mistaken, is the painted snail. You can tell me if I'm wrong. And I just thought that a snail was such a beautiful image for someone who has two homes, two places that it calls home, both the shell and then the environment. And just this little part I'm going to share with you. I am sorry for not being truly sorry. Trunk upon trunk, ficus trees build themselves out. Crossing a wide boulevard under these clouds, I pursue the life given to me. This sheet of water covering the ground. The winter sets its teeth. Nothing given us to keep is lost. So now it's time for us to get lost in Suzanne's work. Suzanne, it's all yours.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Donna. I'm really touched to hear you read that poem. It was so wonderful too to hear you, John. Congratulations on your book, and your poems were so powerful. I'm so happy to be here tonight. I'm not sure if Matthew Henry goes by Henry or Matthew, so I'm happy to be reading with Matthew Henry too. As you said, I'm going to be reading from Fixed Star. Fixed Star, I think you gave it a really wonderful introduction, and now I don't have to say anything about it at all. I am going to start with my two poems from my long sonnet sequence. It's a Corona, which is why you'll hear the repeating lines that Donna mentioned. It's called Cuban Palomita. I'm going to read the first two poems from that opening sequence. There are actually two Coronas in the book, one in the first half and one in the second. But I'm going to begin at the beginning. Cuban Palomita. Birth cleaved me in half. The sea I grew legs in, now a dissonance, a fixed star. The Atlantic where I summer cannot diminish the dichotomy. This figurine, with its sash cinched by gold leaf, its delicate arm grafted with glue. It's the din of fiesta I hear on the boardwalk, that green button of memory, an earring tucked into an envelope found in a bureau with the scarves. Found in a bureau with the scarves, an imprint of identity, a single gold ball stud, evidence of cultural piercing, a lace dress, a first language, all myths once we moved north. Washed on shore, we lost our heritage. Sometimes it happens when you're standing. Watch yourself. Perhaps it's as effortless as drifting, the soft light of a street lamp on a November morning, taking the edge off the stars. My body as a communist country. Its betrayal, totalitarian, skin dry as parchment, lit by the slightest brush. The scent in our sheet sets off chimes, a measure until you return. The minutes I swallow whole. Castro, you've nothing in Cuba like my desire. My body's capitalism, greedy. It's a slow jam in a darkened room, keeping time with the DJ. It's lyric, the blue light of aging, shadows, desires waking. 10 years from now, we'll wonder at this. My body's exacting power, brooking no opposition. What it means to be Cuban, hyphenated. It means I'm on a journey. Is the soil blood red or brick red? To witness, miles of tobacco's green waves. Yes, I know, no yearning for the island, or talk about a mango tree in the backyard, Carol City. What about burrs in the grass pricking my feet? Graffiti? My Cuban sitter built a tiled shrine to Mary, my only mother. I sat at her feet for days. What it means to be Cuban hyphenated? I don't know. My father's from Cuba. I'm American. He wanted me to learn one language really well. The quest, nascent. The quest brought its own interstellar medium in the end. She was matter between stars in a galaxy of stars. The yoked constellations, capitalist and communist, rang bright on her skin. Fidel, is it cold in Cuba? She is nascent, still, because her body is here and she is not. A numinous zephyr lily of love, cloistral and cognizant, laminated to each star. Suzanita is but one stria here. The lathe is the sinew and the cloche, terracotta. Entiendo. The royal palms have closed up shop. The next poem I'm going to read is a cento. And not to be, in case you don't know what a cento is, it is a poem made up of other people's lines from other people's poems. And it's totally legit, okay? Palm tree cento. This is not something I've just learned. There was a sphere with dark patches like mountains, and I swear by this stolen image, you should listen to what they are hinting. Over there, evil and good actually have faces. How I would like to believe in tenderness, to know that light falls and fills, often without our knowing. I am not speaking of rose windows. Here, after a meager diet of horizon, is some scenery. All the leaves stuck out their tongues. I am going to read numbers 9 and 10 from Cuban Palomita. It's an odd form of capitalism. In the stands, the man with his hands on his hips and his head tilted back searches for answers. People, man, they love hurting people. Whatever these women do, like others, they want to see the world. The money change happened so fast, nobody had time to think. And while I could end there, I have no desire to. I need a history more complete. So I continue with my father's story, making up details as I go along. Making up details as I go along. I held my hands up to the generals. I walked around investigating the endless star, an empty net, the fish trapped inside the wind. The first night was wonderful, adrift amid the remnants. In the empty house, I hear the sea. The boats were manned by brothers, uncles, cousins. Blood ties, a bond love can twist. All the years by the sea taught her every definition of blue. There was a lot of lechery and disorder. and I am queen on that island. In March of 2003, Normando Hernandez Gonzalez was among 75 Cuban journalists who were arrested in what became known as the Black Spring. This next poem was found in interviews on his experience. Black Spring. I held my breath under the bed, curled like a knot against the wall. They searched cars, they searched everywhere, searched everything. A small incandescent bulb lit 24 hours a day. I always talked. If I had the desire to speak, I spoke. My only sunlight hours, Monday through Friday at noon. All 7 of us remained in solidarity. We began our hunger strike on the 13th of August. They took everything, including the mattress from the bed. All they left me was my underwear. The cell was completely boarded up, a small crack at the top of the door. If I stood on 5 books, I could look out into the prison. There was not an inch of me without a mosquito bite. Small red bumps on every part of my body. I never could sleep in that cell. To get through something like this, you think about your family. I believe that was my wife's saddest experience. She doesn't even like to speak of it, of when they let her see me. I didn't stand up when they did head counts. I wouldn't dress in prisoner's clothes. I never addressed any guard or official by rank. I was beaten with rubber sticks. In Cuba, even to breathe is illegal. To breathe. If you breathe the air and while taking it in, you don't praise the government, you are being unlawful. It's as if the sky and the earth are going to come together and crush you, and no one will notice it's happening. Leaving prison was like being born with experience. Everything I do is motivated by love. There are remnants that remain. I would like to forget, but unfortunately, I cannot forget. And this is how it is. Exilio. Conch shell pink. This sky echoes an ocean, a song weighted with pearls and sea glass. Mercedes, what did you make of Miami? Did it taste like sunlight on your wrist? White mariposa replaced by ribbon orchid. Jasmine, a scent of dreams. And flamenco, castanets cast on the ground. Your granddaughter will seek you in 100 mirrors. In Castile, in Cuba, she'll twine a history with silver thread. The ocean will rise up to whisper in her ear. Spanish. Speak its measured notes. Recall the year long in paper. The cargo ship sent a single rolling wave. The sailors, tick them off your fingers, melodious. Listen, you cannot even name his brothers. And Abuelas becomes a hymn. Mercedes, Mercedes, Mercedes. A song to weed the garden by. Mercedes. This is how we lose the language, how we lose ourselves to myth, to legend, and how you find me with regrets only. The last poem I'm going to read for you is from one of the sonnets from the second crown in the book, and it's called Andalusia. A moment longer, it may not have rubbed off the bougainvillea stain, its wine blossom. Rough is the face of Serranía de Ron, and rough the sand that spills from your palm. Darker than expected, night over the Mediterranean Sea. Strange to you, these hot stars, white like mijas, and their ascent as hard. Had you known, would you still complete the journey? No habla español. Habla inglés, por favor. ¿Qué hora es? Time. We are speaking of time. How long it takes a stain to set, a flower to blossom. More than a morning. Via Canto inspired columns, and nothing you promise will coax the palomas to follow you home. Thank you all so much. Very kind. So wonderful to see so many people out tonight for poetry.
Yes, thank you, Suzanne. Beautiful. I mean, just recently got your book. You saw me post the other day. And I loved hearing you read the poems. The sound in the poems is just beautiful.
Thank you.
So yay. And we're on to our last but not least reader, who is Matthew E. Henry. I'll put his bio and his link in the chat. Matthew, I also met on the internet, yay internet, on Twitter with a group of teachers, K-12 teachers, 6-12 teachers, who were also writers. We organized a reading a couple of years ago. We didn't realize there were so many of us out there. Joan is here tonight too, Joan Glass. She was in that initial group of people that I met. And what a talented group of people who both do the difficult job of middle and high school education all day and then still write on their own. And then I was very lucky to be on a panel with both Joan and Matthew at AWP last year, and Matthew's humor and honesty very easily reveal how much he cares for his students, and his poems articulate the very important and uncomfortable truths that are so often ignored about Black bodies in the world, but particularly in the world of education. I have such admiration for the work he does in the classroom and as a writer. Many of his poems are an open letter to a world that does not want to receive it. I wish that pre-service teachers were asked to read his poems, particularly this one, which is a favorite from his book, The Colored Page, called Classical Conditioning. We sit in our newly minted desks, Melvin, Matthew, and Matt. Only 3 years from retirement, she finds our names difficult to distinguish. We bear no family resemblance. Two are Black, one is white. When a question is asked and more than one of our hands are raised, we're never sure which she wants unless she's smiling. So here we go for our last reader of the evening. Matthew, it is all yours.
I don't know how I can follow both John and Suzanne and then also Donna, so I'm gonna do my best. Thank you for the invite. I'm gonna actually do something weird, at least weird for me. I'm not gonna read from the colored page at first. I'm gonna read I have an upcoming chapbook that's gonna be released from Harbor Editions in December of 2023, yay. It's called Said the Frog to the Scorpion. It's a set of love poems, sort of. Love poems about toxic relationships, both romantic and professional. And I'm a teacher, so you can imagine. Sometimes it's hard to tell which is which in the poem. So if you hear a she or a her referred to, it could be romantic, it could be an institution. We'll see what happens. Hevel. I have to remind myself you're not real. Not a ghost of someone who once was, who now remains incomplete. Not a dream cobbled from my subconscious desires. You're the reflection of a shadow cast on a sun-facing window, obscuring all movement within. The graspable portion of fog and mist, here in absent vanity. The kiss never given, leaving my cheek stained red. This next poem is entitled, What I Learned During Black History Month. I read that wrong, sorry. What I Learned During Black History Month by Billy, age 8 or 18. Black people were slaves who were set free by a king named Martin Luther after he had a dream about sitting in the back of a bus with a lady railroad conductor. She convinced him not paying people was wrong. Also, his brother George, a farmer who invented peanut butter, the gas mask, and the stoplight, was so good at baseball, he played with the white kids at school in front of the National Guard. Sadly, Martin was shot on a wintry street in Boston, which started the War of Civil Rights, the Harlem Renaissance, and birthed President Obama. I probably shouldn't say that that poem was actually inspired by overhearing like students talking about like Black History Month and like what they took away from it. And I was like, cool, you're a senior going to graduate. Awesome. This is sort of the title track of the collection. An open letter to the one who should have gotten away. Yet somehow, as the scorpion thrashed her pincers and drowned, the frog survived, flopped ashore, croaked himself back to life. A week, a month later, along the same muddy shore, another barbed-tailed arachnid implored him for safe passage across the stream. A ride atop his slick, perforated back. It's not that he doesn't remember. It's just his nature. He never learns. I'm debating whether I'm going to add like a bunch of swears to the end of that one. So, you can maybe leave in the chat whether or not like it, he never mother effing learns. I don't know, give me some feedback. This is the first time I've read any of these poems out loud. So that'd be great. From later in the collection. When asked why I don't teach elementary school, I think I saw I might have one or two of my students here, so they've heard me rant about this. When asked why I don't teach elementary school. So let me get this straight. This white girl from the burbs, golden curls, bonnet blue as her eyes, breaks into the house of 3 brown bears with the confidence of the average Ashley gentrifying Brooklyn or Jamaica Plain. So while they were out bonding before breakfast, she criticizes their cuisine, smashes their shit, complains that nothing fits her flat lack of contours, and then, upon their confused return, flees with a harrowing tale she's sure to share at every dinner party. A survivor's story, her bravery in the face of rabid peril. And I'm supposed to side with her? This next poem is one of my sonnets. I will call it a sonnet in quotes. And it borrows from many other sonnets and love poems and love songs, so maybe you'll be able to identify some of them. When asked what it's like to love her. Let me count the ways she disappoints. Like a faculty meeting where the admin can't be bothered to convincingly lie, and it all should have been in an email. She's inconsistent as the moon, alters hourly, weekly issues new missives. She'll misremember, yet hang round my neck. I can't walk through these halls unencumbered by false ties binding me to this brick house on fire. Love's no summer's day. It's not all. Bread nourishes, sleep's precious, and for air I'd gladly trade the memories of her, were it not for my children, whose small hands I'll hold, strong as death, until in my grave. And the last one from this collection before I jump over to the colored page is entitled Jocko Graves, and I've got to get background on this one. If you've ever seen those lawn ornaments, not the garden gnomes that are terrifying, and I don't know why they're out there, but lawn jockeys. The myth is that there was a young Black boy named Jocko Graves who selflessly died while George Washington was crossing the Delaware. So Washington told him, can you stay with the horses and with a lantern? And for some reason, he stayed there and froze to death holding the lantern and the reins of Washington's things. There is no evidence that this person ever existed, but that's the folktale that came up to justify putting small Black people on people's lawns. Jocko Graves. So I reminded her that my contract officially lists my position as a full-time English language arts teacher, not lawn jockey. A comfortable token prominently placed on the district website, accomplishments lauded before the school board without acknowledgement outside the public eye. A faithful groomsman, inoffensive and not to scale. A stable hand raised in dual purpose, a lantern, a hitching post. A lie based on her need to believe I'm willing to die for the love, the honor of serving her concerns. I'm going to read a few from the colored page, which just came out this summer. These I have read before, and some of these poems people have said they're full of rage. Some of them I just actually find funny because once you've lived through something, you've got to laugh because the other option is murder, and that's frowned upon in this institution. Self-evident. As a kid from Boston, the Revolutionary War was my favorite subject in 4th grade. A tea party I could respect. Class trips vainly searching for musket balls in Lexington treetops. Reading of decapitation by cannonballs on Breed's Hill. Even the sites in Southie, unsafe for me to visit, were a source of tribal pride, like rooting for the Patriots. We were told to don our colonial imagination caps and tell our story of emancipation from the British. Where would we be? The Old South Meeting House, the Old North Church? What would we see as we rose to American greatness? Our teacher should hear freedom ringing through our words. I dropped my head to begin, oversized pencil in hand, until I remembered. Seeing my inaction, she crouched and began to re-explain. I patiently waited for her to finish, eyes on her lips, and then asked if she wanted me to pretend to be white, or to picture myself for sale on the steps of Faneuil Hall, or stacked in one half of the harbor ships heading to and from the West Indies, explaining my parents' patois. After the vocal static, the hems and haws of white noise, she suggested Crispus Attucks, the hometown boy, the Black hero of the Boston Massacre. My siblings had taught me the one-drop rule, and when to nod my head politely. So I pretended he was not half Wampanoag, that Framingham was not his master's home, and imagined myself the first unarmed Black man shot on these urban streets. As Donna mentioned, the colored page is like my semi-autobiographical journey from 1st grade through doctoral study, student through being a teacher, or as one of my students phrased it, being a raisin in a bowl of milk. I've often been one of the only Black or brown faces in a classroom on either side of the desk. And I think right now I'm the only Black teacher in my district because the other one left. I have a poem in the other book about someone who I won't name in the administration confusing me for the other Black guy. A school poem again. 12 Minutes a Slave. I realize also in the audience is someone I went to high school with, so no naming of names since you'll know who did this thing. 12 Minutes a Slave. We held a slave auction in class today. Probably not a state-sanctioned component of AP US history, but Mr. S made a block out of the front row desks, coronated it off with backwards-facing chairs. He shame-forced Tony Miller above us, introduced him as item number 5. He prepared a catalog, a one-sided sepia sheet with Tony's description and a starting price. Before the bidding, Mr. S made Tony turn in perfect circles so we could all see what we were getting. Made him show his gums and teeth, roll up his sleeves and flex, lift an Oxford unabridged over his head and strain for as long as he could. We were encouraged to holler, not yell, intrusive questions about Tony's pedigree and prior owners, to discuss if he was better suited for house or field, to speculate about breeding options. After Tony climbed down, unable to meet our eyes or the oppressive silence, I was almost ashamed that a white teacher treating one of his own like this made my brown skin rattle with the joy of falling chains. a teacher poem. When asked why, all lives don't matter. After a deep breath, I attempted to explain. My aunt had breast cancer. Despite a healthy dose of science and scripture, prayer and prescriptions, the shadows never dimmed. We celebrated her life, mourned the hole her grave dug in ours. We lauded her loving kindness, questioned the natural shocks flesh is heir to, why this disease would claim a wife, a coworker, a friend, an aunt. At the repast, heads turned to the future, saving other sons and daughters, ourselves. A collection was taken to fund breast cancer research, a medical scholarship for oncology study discussed, a proposal for new. From the back of the church hall, a woman no one recognized screamed, "What about ovarian cancer and prostate cancer? Why aren't you talking about those? All cancers matter." Most of my students nodded into the ensuing silence. But some blank stares and my job description doomed me to be more didactic, to explain appropriate time, place, and manner, intent versus impact, the guilt and shame required to derail communal grief and hijack a narrative to make oneself more comfortable. I explained the human duty to choose. Enter the room willing to bear bodies on your shoulders, or arms empty, leave and silently stand outside. I said, replace cancer with lives, and waited. I read that poem last week at an event, and a couple people actually walked out. And I was like, all right, cool. I guess that works. Yeah. I'll read two more. One, I guess, trigger warning. I'm going to use the N-word and I'm going to actually read it. I can get away with it. And I like to say with this poem, if you're offended more by the use of the N-word than what the poem's about, you've got some work to do. An open letter to the white girls caught chanting nigger on Snapchat again. How privileged you are. The social stigma of being a racist lingers for only a week. That white woman tears watch away the stench that should still follow the shit still stuck to the roof of your mouth, but it's not your fault. You don't know that words have meanings or histories. And it is so unfair that we get to say it. This reverse racism, which makes you so uncomfortable to sing our songs in monochromatic parties fueled by sour dabs and White Claw. But you weren't singing. Your coven chanted your word of the night as if to summon Jim Crow and Judge Lynch from their light slumber. It's our fault. You never had the ovicular fortitude to laugh slur in front of we, who must now endure an apology as honest as your hair compared to its roots. And as your parents rush to protect your fragile backs from the whips and lash of eyes as you pass through the halls, the right whispers calling you exactly what you are, your former teacher has one question. Avoided by the administration, cautioned by legal counsel. Which nigger replaced my name? Replaced Chris and Latoya's, Hannah and Timothy's, Michael and Ashanti's, Anthony and Naoma's, Shania and Ashley's. Those are the names of all the Black seniors who were in the same class as those young ladies. I did stop them from putting hands on the offending young ladies, but apparently that's my job. I will read this last poem. I'll read the title twice. An open letter to the public school employees worried that anti-racist is too controversial a term. This is where I work. I did find out who this was, and they were really mad at me. An open letter to the public school employees worried that anti-racist is too controversial a term. Some days I believe the number of first cousins holding hands in a marital bed is dwindling. An illusion upended when you speak. I hope hand soap lights your face on fire, and the only available suppressant is a dull fork. I hope termites lay oblong eggs in your pubic hair and hone their taste for unwashed flesh. I hope your children choose your elder care options from that old 60 Minutes expose and find your savings the perfect seed money for investing in underwater solar panels. I hope happiness is a football, that you're Charlie Brown and time is Lucy. I hope your cat leaves, your kite strings always break, and ravens remember your eyes. I hope you'll understand how you sound. I hope you'll realize this poem is an acrostic, a noose waiting to tilt your neck and act accordingly. And the letters down the side are SHUT THEFUCKUP. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. This is why I love doing this series. We had 3 completely different voices tonight, all powerful and distinct. And that's what's so great about poetry in general, is that there is something for everybody. And especially when you hear a writer read their own work. So I am going to just thank you all for coming. If you'd like to, you're getting all kinds of love in the chat there. I'm going to stop the recording